It was one of those evenings that made everything feel heavier than usual. The sky was gray, the air smelled of rain, and the narrow road that led out of town seemed quieter than ever. A small old car crawled along the road, its headlights barely cutting through the mist. Inside sat a tired woman holding the steering wheel tightly, her daughter sitting quietly in the back seat hugging her school bag. They had just finished another long day. The woman worked 2 part-time jobs to make sure there was enough food on the table and a roof over their heads. Her daughter was her only reason to keep going. Every night, even when her body ached and her eyes burned from exhaustion, she reminded herself that giving up was not an option. The sound of the rain started soft, but soon turned into a steady downpour. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up, making that tired squeaking sound that comes from old rubber blades. The woman sighed, tapping the steering wheel nervously as she squinted through the blurry windshield. Her daughter's soft voice came from the back seat. "Mommy, are we almost home?" "Almost, sweetheart," she replied gently, even though they were still a good half-hour away. Just a little more. The road twisted through a stretch of countryside. No streetlights, no nearby houses, just dark trees lining both sides. Then, without warning, the car gave a small jerk. The woman frowned. Another jerk followed, and then came that awful sputtering noise, the sound every driver dreads. She pressed the accelerator, but the car only coughed, slowed, and came to a stop. "Oh no," she whispered, her heart sinking. She turned the key again, but the engine only groaned. Once, twice, nothing. Her daughter peeked over the seat. "What happened?" "The car stopped, honey," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Don't worry, Mommy will fix it." But deep down she knew she couldn't. She barely knew more than how to fill the tank and check the oil. She glanced around. Empty road, rain pouring harder now, wind shaking the trees. Her phone sat on the dashboard. She grabbed it quickly, praying it still had battery. The screen flickered to life for a moment, then went dark. Dead. She sank back in her seat and let out a shaky breath. The sound of rain filled the silence. Water streaked down the windows in silver trails and thunder rolled in the distance. For a few minutes she just sat there, trying to think. Her daughter looked worried, clutching her small stuffed toy. "Are we going to be okay, Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart," she said softly, turning to smile at her. "We'll be fine. Someone will pass by soon." But in her heart she wasn't so sure. It was late. The road wasn't busy even in the daytime, and now the rain made it worse. The air inside the car felt colder with each passing minute. She pulled her jacket tighter and decided to check under the hood. Maybe it was something simple. She stepped outside and the rain hit her face immediately, cold and heavy. She opened the hood, staring at the engine, but it all looked like a maze of metal and wires. She sighed, brushing away the raindrops from her forehead. "Come on," she muttered to herself, turning the key again. The engine made a weak noise but refused to start. Just when she was about to give up, she saw a pair of headlights appear from the curve of the road behind them. Her heart leapt. She quickly waved her arms, hoping the driver would stop. The car slowed, then pulled over behind hers. The bright headlights dimmed and the door opened. Out stepped a tall man holding an umbrella. He wore a dark coat, and even in the rain he seemed calm and composed. The woman hesitated for a second. Alone on a road, her daughter in the car, a stranger approaching. But something about his voice when he spoke made her feel less afraid. "Is everything all right?" he asked, his tone polite and steady. "My car broke down," she said, raising her voice over the rain. "I think the engine's dead. I tried restarting it, but it won't work." He nodded, glancing at the car. "Mind if I take a look?" She stepped aside, grateful and still cautious. "Please, if you know how." The man set down his umbrella and bent under the hood without hesitation. Raindrops splashed onto his shoulders, but he didn't seem to care. He checked a few parts, tightened something, then asked her to try turning the key again. She climbed in, turned it once more, and this time the engine coughed louder, but still didn't start. He gave a small smile. "Almost there. One more minute." She watched him quietly, wondering why a man like him was helping her on such a lonely road. His car parked behind them was a large black SUV. Expensive, spotless, definitely not the kind of vehicle someone used for roadside errands. His shoes, even soaked in rain, looked expensive. And yet there he was, fixing a stranger's broken car in the middle of a storm. After a few minutes, he called out again. "Try now." She turned the key and the engine roared to life. Relief flooded her face. Oh my God, it's working. He closed the hood and smiled. Looks like your battery connection was loose. It happens sometimes. Thank you, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped. He shrugged lightly. Just glad I came by at the right time. He wiped his hands on a small towel from his pocket as if this wasn't the first time he'd done something like this. You and your daughter should head home soon. The weather's only getting worse. She nodded, smiling gratefully. You've been so kind. Can I at least pay you something for helping? He shook his head. No need. Just get home safe. She wanted to ask his name, maybe offer him some coffee sometime to thank him properly, but before she could, he'd already picked up his umbrella and walked back toward his car. The rain softened slightly, like even the sky had paused to watch him leave. His SUV's lights came on and soon he was gone, just a pair of taillights disappearing into the mist. For a moment she sat there in silence, her hands still trembling slightly. Her daughter leaned forward from the back seat, eyes wide. Mommy, he was nice. Yes, he was, she whispered softly. Very nice. As they started driving again, the world around them seemed calmer. The rain began to slow and the road, though still empty, didn't feel so lonely anymore. The little girl hummed softly to herself, her voice light and innocent. The woman smiled faintly, glancing in the rearview mirror. You know, she said, sometimes people appear in your life for just a moment, but that moment changes everything. Her daughter didn't understand fully, but she nodded anyway. Like a hero? The woman chuckled quietly. Yes, maybe like that. They drove the rest of the way home in peaceful silence. When they finally reached their small apartment building, the woman parked the car and sat for a second, thinking about the stranger again. His face, calm and kind, stayed in her mind. She wished she'd at least learned his name. The next morning, she woke up early as usual, made breakfast for her daughter, and got ready for another long day. But something inside her felt different, lighter. The memory of the man helping them in the rain gave her a strange kind of comfort, like a reminder that good people still existed, even when life seemed unfair. For the next few days, she found herself telling small pieces of that story to her coworkers at the bakery. They all reacted the same way, surprised, touched, some even smiling like they wanted to believe that kind of kindness still happened in the world. Her boss joked that she should have gotten his number. She laughed but didn't respond. Deep down she knew that moment wasn't about romance or anything like that. It was about hope, a rare act of kindness from someone who didn't owe her anything. Her daughter, though, was the one who couldn't stop talking about it. Every night before bed she'd bring it up again. Mommy, do you think we'll see him again? I don't know, she'd answer honestly. But maybe one day. The little girl smiled as if she believed it would happen. If we do, I'll tell him thank you again. The woman smiled too, brushing her daughter's hair. That's a good idea, sweetheart. And somewhere across town in a tall glass office building, the same man sat by his window watching the rain fall outside. He had more money than he could ever spend, more employees than he could remember by name, and more meetings than he cared for. But his mind wasn't on work. It was on that woman and her little girl, the ones he'd helped on that lonely road. He couldn't explain why, but helping them had stirred something in him that his life of success had long forgotten. He smiled faintly, turned his gaze back to the city lights, and thought, maybe I'll see them again someday. Days passed quickly and life returned to its ordinary rhythm. The woman continued her early morning routine, waking up before sunrise, preparing breakfast, helping her daughter get ready for school, and then hurrying to the bakery where she worked. The pay wasn't much, but it kept the lights on and food on the table. Every time she passed the road where her car had broken down, she felt a strange warmth in her heart. She would glance at that stretch of asphalt and remember the night rain poured and a stranger came to help. She didn't know his name or who he was, but that short encounter stayed in her mind like a small, comforting light. At work, her coworkers often noticed she looked happier lately. You've been smiling more these days, one of them said, shaping dough beside her. Something good happen? She smiled softly, dusting flour off her hands. Nothing big, she said, just a reminder that good people still exist. Her coworker raised a brow. That sounds mysterious. She laughed lightly and told them the story about the man who had stopped in the rain to fix her broken car. Everyone listened carefully. A few of them were surprised that someone so well-dressed and kind would go out of his way to help. People like that are rare, her boss said, shaking his head with a half-smile. You must have been lucky that night. Maybe, she replied quietly. Or maybe some people just never forget how to care. That evening, when she picked her daughter up from school, the little girl was still talking about the same man. "Mommy," she said while skipping along the pavement, "do you think he has kids too?" The woman smiled. "Maybe, why do you ask?" "I just think he looked like a nice dad," the girl said innocently. When he smiled, it felt like he was happy to help. Her mother nodded, holding her hand gently. "Yes, sweetheart. Some people find happiness in helping others." The conversation stayed with her all night. She wondered who he really was. A mechanic, a businessman, or maybe just someone passing through. Whoever he was, he had shown her that kindness could come from anywhere. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, the man who had helped them sat in his office late one evening. The glass windows behind him reflected the city lights, and his desk was filled with papers, contracts, and half-finished reports. His assistant had already left for the night, but he remained there, lost in thought. For years, his life had revolved around meetings, deals, and numbers. He had built a company from the ground up, a company that now employed hundreds of people. But success had slowly built a wall between him and the world outside. It had been a long time since anyone looked at him without expecting something in return. That night on the rainy road had reminded him of something he'd almost forgotten, what it felt like to help simply because someone needed it. The gratitude in that woman's eyes, the innocent trust in her daughter's voice. Those small things had meant more to him than any business award or contract. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling, wondering if they made it home safely. He didn't even know their names, but part of him hoped that they were doing all right. The next morning, he arrived at the office early. His employees were surprised to see him already there, going through papers with renewed focus. "You're early today, sir," one of them said. He smiled faintly. Just wanted to get a head start. But what he didn't admit, even to himself, was that he felt lighter somehow. Helping those strangers had made him want to do more, even in small ways. That week, he approved extra funding for a local charity project his company supported, and he even started joining his staff for lunch instead of eating alone in his office. It was a small change, but it made him feel closer to the people around him. Back at the bakery, the woman worked hard every day. The smell of freshly baked bread and coffee filled the air as customers came and went. The bakery wasn't fancy, but it was warm and full of life. She often worked behind the counter, serving regular customers with a smile. Her daughter sometimes waited there after school, sitting quietly in the corner doing her homework while the sound of laughter and clinking cups filled the small space. The girl loved the bakery, especially watching her mother knead dough and decorate pastries. "Someday," she said one afternoon, "I want to have a bakery just like yours." The woman chuckled softly. "This isn't mine, honey. I just work here. But it could be yours," the girl said firmly. "You make everything taste so good." Her words made the woman pause for a moment. She smiled but didn't answer. Deep down, she had always dreamed of owning her own bakery, a small place where she could create her own recipes and share them with others. But dreams cost money, and for now, just keeping things steady was enough. One night, as she was closing up the bakery, her boss handed her an envelope. "For you," he said with a grin. "The company we're delivering to next week placed a big order. They asked for you to handle it personally." She looked at the paper inside. It was a catering order from a well-known corporate office in the city, one she'd only heard about in the news. "Are you sure you want me to take it?" she asked, surprised. "You're the best we've got," her boss replied, and the client specifically mentioned wanting everything perfect. "You can handle it," she nodded, a little nervous but excited too. It was a big opportunity and she wanted to do it right. For the next few days, she worked harder than ever, testing recipes and planning the menu. Her daughter watched with pride, helping to pack boxes and label them. The morning of the delivery, the sky was clear and blue. The woman loaded the boxes carefully into the small bakery van. Her daughter insisted on coming along, promising to behave. "Just sit quietly and don't touch anything," her mother said with a smile. "I will," the girl promised. They drove across the city, weaving through traffic until the tall buildings began to rise around them. The streets were busier here, filled with people in suits and cars that looked far newer than their old van. The mother felt a little out of place, but she reminded herself that she had worked hard for this moment. Finally, they pulled up in front of a sleek, glass-covered building. The name of the company gleamed in silver letters across the front, one she recognized from magazines and news stories. She took a deep breath, adjusted her apron, and started unloading the boxes. Her daughter held the door open proudly. Inside, the lobby was spacious and elegant, with marble floors and tall windows. People moved around quickly, talking into phones and carrying folders. The woman walked carefully toward the reception desk, her hands full of pastry boxes. She smiled politely at the receptionist who guided her toward the elevator. As they waited, her daughter's eyes wandered around the large room. Everything looked shiny and perfect, so different from their small bakery. The elevator doors opened and they stepped inside. The woman pressed the button for the floor listed on the order form. Her heart beat a little faster. She wanted everything to go smoothly. When they reached the top floor, a group of assistants greeted them warmly. "You must be from the bakery," one of them said. "We've been expecting you." She nodded with a polite smile and began setting up the trays. Her daughter stayed close, helping arrange napkins. As they worked, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Several people turned as a man entered the room, his presence commanding quiet respect. The assistants immediately straightened up. The woman didn't look up right away. She was busy arranging cupcakes on a tray. But her daughter did. She froze for a moment, her eyes wide, and then tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy," she whispered loudly, her little voice echoing across the room. "That's the man who repaired our car." Everyone stopped. Heads turned. The mother slowly looked up, and then her breath caught in her throat. There he was. The same man from that rainy night, dressed in a suit this time, calm and confident, standing in front of her as if fate itself had brought them together again. He looked just as surprised, but his expression quickly softened into a warm smile. The assistants glanced at each other, confused. None of them could believe what the little girl had just said. The woman stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding, unsure what to say, but the man simply smiled a little wider and said, "It's good to see you again." The little girl's voice had echoed through the tall, shiny lobby, and suddenly the world seemed to pause for a moment. People stopped moving, assistants froze mid-step, and the man standing across the room felt a strange warmth wash over him. He looked directly at the child and saw recognition, that unmistakable sparkle in her eyes, the one that could only come from a true memory. "Yes," she repeated, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "That's him. That's the man who repaired our car in the rain." The mother's heart raced. She had never expected this day to come so soon or in this way. She stood frozen for a second, unsure whether to smile or apologize for the sudden announcement her daughter had made. The room was quiet now, everyone staring, curiosity shining in their eyes. The man's expression softened further. He took a small step forward, raising his hand slightly in greeting. "I remember that night," he said quietly, his voice calm but sincere. "I'm glad you're both safe." The woman swallowed hard, her voice catching. We made it home," she said softly. "Thanks to you." "No need to thank me," he replied with a small shrug, though the warmth in his eyes said otherwise. "I was happy to help." Her daughter bounced on her toes, unable to hide her excitement. "I wanted to say thank you again," she said quickly. "You saved us." "I didn't get to say it the first time." The man chuckled softly, his eyes twinkling as he crouched slightly to be at eye level with the child. "Well," he said gently, "I'm happy to hear it now." The assistants surrounding them whispered to each other, glancing nervously at the man. No one expected their CEO, a person usually so formal and distant, to be crouching in the lobby, talking warmly with a little girl about fixing a broken car. Some of them smiled quietly, realizing that even people in positions of power could be kind and compassionate. The mother finally moved forward, taking a step toward him. I can't believe it's really you," she said softly. "You were just there, in the rain, helping us when you didn't have to. I never got your name that night." He shook his head gently. "It's all right. Sometimes it's not about names or recognition. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. That was enough for me." The woman felt a lump in her throat. No one had ever treated her with such pure kindness before. Most people saw her struggle, her tired face, and assumed she needed help because of who she was. But this man, he had acted without expectation, without judgment. He had just helped. Her daughter tugged at her sleeve again. "Mommy, can we talk to him for a little while?" The man glanced up, smiling at her. "Of course," he said. "I have a few minutes." The assistant stepped back, allowing them some space. For the first time in years, the mother felt like she could breathe freely in a corporate building, surrounded by elegance and wealth, and yet not feel small or invisible. She glanced around, noticing the shiny floors, the polished walls, the people moving quickly. All of it could feel intimidating, but with him here, everything seemed human and approachable. "Do you remember exactly what happened?" she asked softly, still in disbelief. He nodded. "Your car broke down on a rainy road," he said, smiling faintly. "You looked worried and your daughter was scared. I didn't want you to be stranded out there. It felt like the right thing to do." The woman's eyes filled with tears and she blinked quickly to stop them. "You have no idea how much that night meant to us," she said. "It wasn't just the car. It was hope. Someone cared. That's not something we see every day." He nodded as if he understood perfectly. "I know what you mean," he said softly. "Sometimes a simple act can change more than you realize. I've seen that in my life too." Her daughter tugged at his sleeve again. Do you like helping people?" she asked, genuinely curious. He smiled at her. "I do. Sometimes it's easy to forget, but helping someone can make your whole day better, or even change your life." The little girl grinned. "I think you made our lives better that night." He looked at her, his expression softening even more. "And you made mine better too," he said quietly. The mother felt a strange mix of emotions, gratitude, relief, and an almost overwhelming sense of respect for this man who had shown them kindness without expectation. She wanted to say more to express everything she felt, but words seemed too small. "So, what brings you here today?" he asked, turning his gaze to the mother. "Delivering pastries?" She nodded, still amazed at the coincidence. "Yes," she said, smiling despite herself. "The bakery where I work got a big catering order. I'm delivering it personally." He raised his eyebrows, impressed. "That's wonderful. You must be very skilled if they trusted you with a big order like this." "I try my best," she replied, a little shyly. "It's not my own bakery yet, but I'm learning every day." He smiled softly. "You're doing more than learning. You're taking responsibility, working hard and caring for your daughter. That's admirable." The woman felt her chest tighten. Compliments like that didn't come easily in her world. Most people saw her tiredness or her struggles, not her efforts. But this man, he saw her, truly saw her. Her daughter, sensing the moment, whispered, "Mommy, maybe he can help us with our bakery one day." The mother blinked at her daughter, surprised, and the man chuckled softly. "Maybe I can," he said. "But first, tell me more about your bakery work. How do you manage everything?" And so the conversation continued. She talked about her daily routine, her passion for baking, and her little dream of someday owning her own shop. She spoke about the challenges of raising a child alone, the long hours and the small victories that kept her going. He listened carefully, nodding, asking gentle questions, never interrupting, never judging. The little girl occasionally chimed in, talking about her favorite recipes, the cupcakes she helped decorate, and the joy of seeing customers smile when they tried her mother's creations. He smiled at her stories, genuinely interested, laughing softly at the small anecdotes that only a child could tell. After a while, the mother realized that they had been talking for nearly half an hour. The assistants had quietly stepped aside, unsure whether they should interrupt, but the CEO seemed completely focused on the two of them. He had that rare ability to make people feel important and valued, something the mother had almost forgotten existed in the adult world. Finally, he leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said, "the world could use more people like you. People who work hard, care about others, and never give up, no matter how difficult things get." She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than I can say." He smiled warmly. "I don't say it because I want anything in return. I say it because it's true. And you've reminded me. It's the small acts of kindness that often matter the most." Her daughter, feeling bold, reached out and held his hand gently. "Thank you for helping us," she said. "You were like a hero that night." He looked down at her, touched by her honesty. "You can call me a hero if you want," he said softly. "But really, anyone would have done what I did." The little girl shook her head. "No one else would. You did it first." The mother smiled at her daughter's words, seeing a spark of wisdom even in her young age. She looked back at the man, realizing that he wasn't just a stranger from that rainy night anymore. He had become a person who reminded them that kindness existed, that some people gave without expecting anything in return, and that hope could appear when least expected. For a moment, all three of them stood there in the middle of the elegant office, a small circle of connection in a busy world. Outside, the city moved at its usual hurried pace, but inside, time seemed to slow. The man finally straightened, giving a small nod. "I should get back to work," he said gently, though his tone suggested he didn't want the conversation to end. "But I'm very glad I saw you both again." The mother nodded, still a little overwhelmed. "Me too, truly." Her daughter smiled brightly. "Can we see you again someday?" He smiled at her, warmth in his eyes. "I hope so. I really do." As he walked away, the mother felt a strange mix of relief and excitement. She didn't know how their paths would cross again, but something told her that this encounter wasn't the last. Fate had a way of bringing people together when it mattered most, and somehow, she believed that it was only the beginning. And as the little girl held her mother's hand and watched him disappear down the hallway, she whispered, "Mommy, he's kind." "Really kind," the woman nodded, smiling softly, knowing that the memory of that rainy night and this unexpected reunion would stay with them forever. After that first unexpected reunion, the woman couldn't stop thinking about the man. She thought about him not as a CEO or a stranger, but as someone who had genuinely cared about them when they were in need. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see the rain pouring that night, the way he had knelt by the car working quietly and efficiently, and the calm look in his eyes that made her feel safe. She returned to her bakery work, but the experience had changed something inside her. She found herself smiling more at customers, speaking more gently to her coworkers, and even taking a little more time with her daughter. The world hadn't changed, but her perspective had. She realized that kindness and attention, even from strangers, could shift a person's entire outlook. Days later, she received a message from the company where she had delivered the catering order. It was short, polite, and professional. The CEO wanted to speak with her. Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what to expect. A part of her felt nervous. After all, this was someone far above her in the world of business. But another part of her felt a small spark of hope. On the day of the meeting, she dressed carefully, choosing simple clothes that were neat and comfortable. She wanted to appear professional, but she also wanted to be herself. Her daughter stayed home that day, waving goodbye from the doorway, her little face full of curiosity and excitement. "Tell him thank you for me too," she said. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than it actually was. She could hear the hum of the city outside, the distant sounds of traffic and life continuing around them. When the doors opened, the same assistants she had met before guided her toward a private office. Inside, the man was already waiting. This time, he had taken a seat behind his large desk, but he gestured for her to sit on the chair opposite him. His presence was calm, reassuring, and not at all intimidating, even though he carried the authority of his position effortlessly. "Thank you for coming," he said softly, giving her a small smile. "I wanted to speak with you privately after our last meeting." "Of course," she replied, feeling her hands tighten slightly in her lap. "I wasn't sure what to expect, but I'm happy to be here." He leaned back slightly, studying her face with genuine interest. "I remember that night on the road," he began. "I've thought about it several times since. I realize that even though I have a busy life, sometimes the simplest acts, helping someone, showing care, are the most meaningful." She nodded, unsure of where this conversation would lead, but feeling a warmth in her chest at his words. "It was very kind of you," she said softly. "I've never forgotten it." He smiled, and in that moment there was a quiet understanding between them. It was as if the distance of social status, titles, and expectations didn't exist. They were just two people, connected by a shared experience. "I also wanted to ask you about your bakery work," he continued. "You handle it very well. The catering order impressed me, and I could see how much effort you put into it." She felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "Thank you," she said. "I work hard. I love baking, and I want to do my best for every customer. Someday I hope to have my own place, but for now I'm learning and doing what I can." He leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the desk. "I can see your dedication," he said. And I can see the care you have for your daughter. That is as important as any skill or talent you have." She blinked, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his words. Most people focused only on her work or her struggles, but he saw both her effort and her heart. "That means a lot," she whispered. He smiled gently. "I also think it's important to recognize when someone deserves a helping hand. I would like to offer support. Not because I expect anything, but because I believe in your potential." She felt her hands tremble slightly. "Support? I don't know what to say." "Say that you'll keep working hard," he replied, his eyes kind. "Say that you'll continue to pursue your dreams. Everything else can follow." Her mind raced. Was he suggesting he could help her start her bakery? That seemed impossible. But the way he spoke, the calm certainty in his tone, made it feel real, and not uncomfortable or patronizing. It felt like an opportunity that had been placed carefully in her hands. Over the next few weeks, they met occasionally in his office, discussing plans, ideas, and small steps she could take to move closer to her dream. He asked about the kind of bakery she wanted, the recipes she was most proud of, and how she imagined the place functioning. Each meeting left her more inspired and confident. She noticed something remarkable in him. Though he was a CEO, accustomed to commanding rooms and making decisions that affected hundreds of people, he never imposed his ideas. He listened. He asked questions. He considered her opinions seriously. It was the first time in years she felt that someone valued her voice, her thoughts, and her experience. Her daughter noticed the changes too. She could see the sparkle in her mother's eyes when she returned home from meetings. She could feel the renewed energy in the apartment, the way her mother hummed softly while preparing dinner, or stayed up late scribbling notes about her recipes. It was a small but important transformation, one that gave them both hope for the future. One afternoon, after a particularly long meeting discussing bakery plans, the man offered to show her around the city to explore potential locations for her future shop. She hesitated at first, unsure if it was appropriate, but his friendly demeanor and simple offer reassured her. They walked through streets she had never dared to enter alone, past bustling markets, quiet corners, and streets lined with small cafes. He pointed out details she had overlooked, how foot traffic might influence a bakery, which areas welcomed families, and where there were opportunities for growth. Throughout the walk, she realized that he didn't treat her as someone beneath him, nor did he act like he was giving charity. Instead, he acted as if they were partners in a small mission, exploring possibilities and making plans together. It was refreshing, empowering, and deeply encouraging. Her daughter sometimes joined these outings, bringing her own enthusiasm and questions. She asked about the different pastries, the smells in the bakeries they passed, and even suggested a few ideas of her own. The man listened to her patiently, nodding and sometimes smiling at the child's innocence. It was clear that he respected not just the woman, but her daughter as well. At home, after long days filled with meetings, research, and walks, the woman often sat quietly with her daughter before bedtime. "Mommy," her daughter said one night, "do you think he really believes in you?" The woman smiled, brushing her daughter's hair gently. "I think he does, sweetheart. And that makes me believe in myself even more." For the first time in years, the woman felt that her dreams weren't impossible. The bakery she had always imagined could become real. Not because of luck, but because someone had given her guidance, support, and belief in her abilities. One evening, after a meeting discussing suppliers and recipes, the man turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You have talent, dedication, and a heart that cares," he said. "Those are qualities that money or experience cannot replace. I want to help you reach your goal, but only if you continue to put your heart into it. Everything else will follow." She nodded, feeling tears well up. "I promise," she whispered. "I'll work hard, and I won't waste this opportunity." He smiled as if he already trusted her completely. "I know you won't," he said simply. Over the next few weeks, small but meaningful changes began to take shape. The man introduced her to suppliers who could provide better ingredients at reasonable prices. He helped her connect with advisors who understood small businesses and could guide her through permits, regulations, and planning. Each step brought her closer to the dream she had once thought unattainable. Meanwhile, their connection deepened, not in the way of romance, but as two people who respected, understood, and genuinely cared about one another's presence in the world. He admired her resilience, her dedication to her child, and the way she approached life with both strength and humility. She admired his humility, his ability to lead without arrogance, and the way he made kindness a priority despite his busy life. And through it all, her daughter remained the joyful, observant, and honest presence that kept the experience grounded. She would often sneak in small notes or drawings for the man saying, "Thank you for helping my mommy," or "We hope you like cupcakes." He accepted them graciously, always with a smile, making the child feel that she too mattered in this journey. For the woman, each day became a step closer to possibility, to hope, and to realizing that sometimes one act of kindness can start a chain reaction that changes lives forever. She no longer just dreamed about a bakery. She planned it, worked toward it, and believed it could happen. And all of this had begun with a man who had stopped in the rain one night, simply because he wanted to help. Weeks passed, and life began to change in quiet, steady ways. The woman worked longer hours than ever before, but for the first time she didn't feel tired. Every bit of exhaustion carried meaning now. Every sleepless night felt worth it. She was working toward something real, something she had once believed was out of reach. The man continued to guide her gently, never forcing decisions, never rushing. He had arranged for her to visit a small space in the heart of the city, an old, unused corner shop that had once been a cafe. The moment she walked in, she could feel something warm about it. The walls were faded, the counters worn down, but she could see it in her imagination. The smell of bread, the sound of laughter, her daughter helping behind the counter, customers smiling as they walked out with warm pastries. He watched her quietly as she looked around, her eyes sparkling with quiet hope. "What do you think?" he asked. She smiled, unable to hide the joy rising in her chest. "It feels like it's waiting for a new story," she said softly. He nodded, almost as if he had known she would say that. "Then maybe it's time to begin." That single line stayed with her for days. Maybe it's time to begin. She repeated it to herself each morning as she walked to work and each night before she went to sleep. It became her reminder that life always offered second chances, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. The weeks that followed were full of small, beautiful chaos. Paperwork, painting, choosing the right ovens, testing recipes. She poured every ounce of her heart into the preparations. Her daughter became her little assistant, dusting flour on the counters and pretending to take orders from invisible customers. Whenever things got hard, the woman remembered how it all started. A broken-down car, a rainy night, and a stranger's kindness. She had no idea that act of help would lead her here, standing in her own bakery with dreams unfolding before her eyes. One evening, as she was finishing up some cleaning, her daughter handed her a folded letter. A man came by, the little girl said. "He said this is for you." The woman opened the letter slowly. Inside was a short note and a set of keys. The handwriting was neat, familiar. "The space is officially yours. I've arranged everything, the lease, the license, and the supplies. Consider this not a gift, but an investment in kindness. You once thanked me for helping you on that rainy night, but the truth is you helped me more. You reminded me that life isn't only about work and numbers. It's about people. Now it's your turn to help others. Wishing you strength and success." No signature, just a simple line drawn beneath the words. She sat there for a long time, the letter trembling in her hands. Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness, and they were pure gratitude. She knew she would never be able to repay him, not in money, not even in words. But she could continue what he started. She could build something that made people feel cared for, the way he had made her feel. The bakery opened on a bright morning filled with soft sunlight. The smell of fresh bread and butter drifted through the street. People passing by stopped to peek in, curious about the new place. The walls were painted in gentle colors, the shelves filled with bread, cakes, and pastries that carried the warmth of handmade love. She stood behind the counter with her daughter, both of them wearing matching aprons. Her hands shook slightly as she served the first customer, but her smile was steady. "Welcome," she said, her voice calm and full of heart. Word spread faster than she expected. Within days, the bakery became a small haven in the neighborhood. People didn't just come for the pastries. They came because they felt something warm there, something genuine. She greeted everyone with kindness, remembered their names, and often slipped an extra cookie into their bags for free. Her daughter loved helping out. She would greet customers with the same cheerful tone every morning, offering samples and chatting happily. The sight of her running around with flour on her cheeks became a daily joy. And though the man never said he would come to the opening, a small part of her hoped he might. She had saved a cupcake for him, the same flavor she had once baked for the catering order that reconnected them. She placed it near the window, waiting. Hours passed, the shop filled with laughter, and the day slowly turned to evening. She began to think he wouldn't come after all. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he had already done enough. And that was okay. She didn't need him to be there to feel his presence. His kindness already filled every corner of that place. But then, as the crowd thinned and the soft glow of sunset spilled through the window, she noticed a familiar figure standing outside. He wasn't wearing his usual suit, just a simple shirt and a calm smile. He waited until the last customer left before stepping in quietly. Her daughter was the first to see him. She gasped, pointing excitedly just as she had months ago in that tall office lobby. "Mommy, that's the man who fixed our car." He laughed softly, his eyes filled with warmth. "I guess you remember me, huh?" he said, kneeling slightly to her level. "Of course," she said proudly. "You're the reason we have this place now." The woman came around the counter, her eyes bright. "You didn't tell me you were coming," she said, her voice gentle. "I didn't want to interrupt," he replied, looking around. "This place is beautiful." "You've done an amazing job," she smiled, emotion swelling in her chest. "You made it possible," she said. He shook his head. "No, you did. I just reminded you that you could." They sat at one of the small corner tables while her daughter busied herself serving them cups of hot chocolate, pretending to be the cafe's official server. The woman placed the saved cupcake on a plate and slid it across to him. "This one's for you," she said softly. "It's the first one I baked this morning." He looked at it for a long moment, then smiled. "You remembered." "I remember everything," she said, "especially the people who changed my life." He took a small bite and his expression softened. "Perfect," he said quietly. "Just perfect." They talked for a while, about how the bakery was doing, about her daughter, about life in general. She told him how his kindness had not only helped her but inspired her to help others. Sometimes she gave free bread to the old man who lived nearby. Sometimes she let the children from the street sit in the shop after school, offering them snacks when they couldn't afford them. He listened with a look of pride, the kind that comes from seeing someone you believe in succeed. "You've turned this place into something special," he said. "I'm glad you found your light again." She smiled, her eyes soft. "You were part of that light." He looked at her for a moment, then glanced around the shop one last time. The walls glowed in the soft evening light, the shelves half empty from a busy day. Her daughter giggled in the background, humming while wiping the counter. It was a picture of peace, of life continuing beautifully. "I think I've already received the best thank you," he said finally. "Seeing this, seeing you happy, now that's more than enough." He stood up to leave, but before he reached the door, her daughter ran up and handed him a small piece of paper. It was a drawing of their bakery, her mother, and him, standing in front of it with smiling faces. Above it, in wobbly handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for fixing our car and fixing our life." He looked at the drawing for a long time, his eyes glistening slightly. Then he knelt and hugged her gently. "You and your mom already fixed everything yourselves," he said softly. He left quietly, walking down the street as the last rays of sunlight faded. She stood at the door, watching him go, her heart full but at peace. Some people enter your life for a short while, yet their kindness leaves an echo that lasts forever. As she locked the shop later that night, she looked around at the cozy little bakery that had once been only a dream. The air still smelled of sugar and bread. Her daughter was asleep in the corner, clutching her toy. She smiled to herself, whispering, "He helped us once, and now we'll help others." The sign outside the bakery glowed softly under the streetlight. It had a simple name, Second Chances. And every time someone stepped through that door, they didn't just find bread or pastries. They found warmth, kindness, and a reminder that a single good act could change the course of a life forever.